The ideas expressed in the following presentations are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of ACI or its committees.
Thanks very much for having me. First, I'd really like to thank a colleague of mine. I've known him for a number of years, Jim Warner. I don't know if he's present in the audience, but he basically wrote the book on this. And I stole a lot of his stuff, and he was kind enough to let me use it. So thanks, Jim. Keep up the good work. Anyhow, that's me. I narrowed the picture a little bit so I don't look quite so fat. I wish I'd put some hair on me, but it didn't happen. Slab jacking. It's the process of either raising concrete pavement slabs or filling voids under them. You can inject a material under pressure, lifting things, leveling it, using hydraulic pressure to do so, and make it back in the line. Perfect example is something like this. Driveways are very common, so there's been settlement, water running under the driveway, and now we raise it up and make it level again. So 3 simple steps. You drill holes, you pump grout, and you fix the holes. There's a little more to it than that. In drilling the holes, you can use all kinds of different drills. Anybody ever see one of these star drills? Probably dates back to the Egyptians. It's this fancy chisel. It's got a point on it and kind of a cross. And you put it on the concrete, you smack it, you rotate it, smack it, rotate it, smack it, rotate it, and you can drill a hole. Pretty low tech. Or you can use a hammer drill. You can use a core drill. You can use a rock drill. Or you can get really fancy and use an air track or a big heavy duty drill, depending on how much stuff you're doing. Pumps. You can use a very simple hand grout pump, piston type of pump. You can use a rotor stator pump. Couple of types, couple of different flavors of those. You can use truck mounted pumps. Anyhow, some way of moving this fairly fluid material to cohesive material through the hole you've just drilled. And how do you make the connection? That's a really critical part. Simplest way is a pipe nipple and a wooden wedge. If you can get it to fit up nicely and hold the pressure. Probably have some leakage around the wooden wedge, so you may want to use some packing material around it. You can use a drive packer or a mechanical packer. Mechanical packers are basically a pipe with an inflatable sleeve on the end that creates a seal. You can actually fill that sleeve with resin in some situations. That's probably overkill for most applications. Another type of inflating packer. The hose you use. This may require a lot of pressure. So there's 200, 500, and 800 psi hoses. If you exceed the pressure of the hose, not only will you have a heck of a mess, you will have a safety hazard. Those hoses will move, and they move fast. So pay attention to that. Use factory formed ends. Yes, there are hose clamps and nipple connectors and so forth. The factory does a much better job, and that's usually one of the weak links in the hose. So, depending on what part of the slab you want to lift really determines where you put the holes. If the entire slab's settled, you may want just a hole in the middle to lift it up. If you've got an edge, you lift from the edge. If you got a pumping joint, it's kind of like an edge. However, if you have too fluid a grout, you may blow out and have a leak, at which point you haven't accomplished a heck of a lot except made a big mess. Also, if you're doing this, make sure you know where the grout goes. You may wind up pumping a whole lot of grout, and now you've got a concrete sewer pipe. So you can fill things. Anywhere the grout's going to move, watch out where it's going. Know about the kind of volume you're going to have. So edges, too fast lifting can crack the slab. So take it slow, take it easy. Pay attention to the leveling. Move it around. Typically cracking pattern. Some cracks are wider on top, others are wider on the bottom. Pay attention. As the slab lifts, binding can occur. You know, it's got rough edges. So be prepared to move it around. Typically, you start working at the lowest point and work outward in both directions and get it level. Then you fill the holes. Pay attention to pump pressure. Too high a pump pressure, you can crack the slab, you can blow out the grout. So one trick that works very well is create a bigger area underneath the slab where you're lifting. This is the law of hydraulics. So you reduce the pump pressure by increasing the area that you're filling. So just like the hydraulic jack, see lifting your car, it's moving through a very small hose into a very large area, but you get a lot more lifting force, a lot more uniform lifting. So, and the way to create that extra void is blow some air in, blow some water in, but create a cavity for you to fill with the grout. It uses an insignificant amount more grout. Also, manifolding is another really nice trick. So yeah, the hoses are kind of tangled up and so forth, but you get the idea. You have several different ports that you can inject in. By playing back and forth with the valves, you can pump multiple locations. You can control the leveling. You know, controlling the leveling, how do you detect movement? One trick that's in Jim's book is put a piece of masking tape across the crack. You can tell if it's getting narrower, wider. Water levels, that's how the Egyptians, they think, leveled the pyramids. It's a tube filled with water, and water seeks its own level. So you can gauge things around corners very easily. It's not extremely expensive. You can use fancy equipment like laser guides too, but you don't have to do it. They've been doing this for many, many years. Then fixing the holes. Pretty straightforward. You can fix them with a repair mortar. Sometimes you may use a sealant or a resinous material. But anyhow, sunken concrete turns into raised concrete. Sloped concrete can be re-leveled. And voids under slabs can be filled. So, pretty quick presentation. There's a lot more detail that can be gone into, but I'll try to answer any questions you may have. And I'd like to thank you.